Now, when we look at solutions for cleaning up teams, we can identify via group policies how teams' archival rules will be processed. Now, these can be handled automagically, as I'll say in quotes, so that we've designed the system to systematically handle the life cycle of team workspaces, including when and how they should be archived. Our aim should always be to prevent sprawl, maintain order, and ensure compliance with organizational standards and the regulatory requirements that are associated with that. Now, that sounds complex, but in actuality, that can be as simple as looking at a particular content container and understanding that, hey, wait a sec, these channels there's been no activity here, there's been no documents uploaded. And there can be an automatic group policy that's associated to notify the team owners that basically says, is this team still active? And if the team is no longer active, within a certain time frame, let's say within 90 days, that team can be archived and go through an appropriate retention and disposition for that particular group. Now, that could be, as mentioned, a particular time frame, or it can even be conditional. When we look at the monitoring of the system, there are activity levels within teams that provide the ability to look at built-in activity reports. There are also third-party management tools that we can look at. Atlantis has partnerships with some third-party products that we can recommend, depending on where you are in your journey. There are notifications prior to archival, letting the team owners know that, hey, they may have said that they didn't need this team 90 days ago, but notifications along the way are giving them an opportunity to still renew that activity or mark the team as still needed. And then once we hit that archival process, making sure that that policy dictates that the team is automatically archived in the appropriate manner. We want to make sure that we're able to retain important historical data without allowing that sprawl to continue. Where we see this typically is around project management, the utilization of teams for project management. There also needs to be the ability to access archive teams as well. And these policies define who can access those archive teams. Perhaps there's an audit and you have a number of auditors that are coming in. Those teams have been around a particular project. Those teams have been archived. You can leverage e-discovery and case management capabilities to provide internal or external auditors with access to those archived teams. That also provides the ability for compliance. Obviously, archival policies often include provisioning for compliance within municipality standards and the legal requirements that are around that for record keeping and reporting capabilities. Now, the effectiveness of an archival policy basically hinges on having clear communication about that policy with users. Again, that user-centric design approach. Additionally, it means making sure that team owners and members of a team know how to effectively manage their own team spaces, and that those are in line with policies that have been applied. The greatest governance you're ever going to see is the one that you're not aware of. So when we look at the solutions for teams, I'm a big believer in process. Obviously, we've highlighted that. Our mission critical processes are the key to ensuring that we have a healthy tree. Now, I consider that the ability to create and manage, to conduct file share and collaboration, but also that archival and deletion, as well as the security around your data. What Atlantis does is we basically conduct an assessment so that we know we can measure what that result is going to be. We also highlight process appropriateness for the ability to actually automate any of your processes with the automation stack, with the AI stack, with the machine learning stack. I just want to highlight, not all processes are necessarily good candidates for automation. This comes down to asking the classic, the what, where, when, who, how. As organization adopts teams the number of channels, conversations, files, and applications can grow exponentially. So to combat that, we want to regularly meet and understand what that current state is, because that current state is always going to be in a transitionary state. The only constant is change, so that we can determine that future state and adjust based on what the actions are to close that gap. The gap typically being what is different. Where will it be different? When are we going to address the differences that are needed? Who will be responsible for identifying and validating that gap? We use the classic RACI model in order to make sure that we have validation around the closure of that gap. We also highlight what our actions are actually going to be to close that gap. Basically, this provides the ability to ensure we're able to roll out new features. Now, I just want to highlight really quickly some of the big changes that are coming within this month, within Teams, actually within the next, I would say, day, but we're in a leap year, so it's actually within the next 2 days. March 31st is when the modern experience will be rolled out. Teams has been around for about 8 years now. And previously, if you look at the classic Teams, it was using custom HTML, AngularJS, and Electron to basically host the backend services. Now, why am I highlighting this? I'm highlighting this because what that means is some additional capabilities around integration with AI and Copilot is going to facilitate that ability to basically have a tremendous amount of data available within the context of your organization and those applications, because it's going to be much easier to integrate those applications because of this new stack. Okay, enough talking. Now let's showcase a little bit of our work. One of the best places to start is via, for a strong governance model, is around the ability to create a team. Now, Atlantis has a request a team app that basically streamlines that process for creating teams within the organization and showing that we've got a single source of truth. It provides standardization for that creation process. It also ensures that you've got governance and compliance. The app can enforce governance policies, sensitivity labels by controlling who can request a new team, who can approve on that team with the appropriate and designated authority to be able to do that. It also leverages something called RBAC, role-based access control, which the application integrates and ensures that only authorized personnel can take a look. It leverages template utilization as well and has integration with other systems. We use metadata for customization of fields, and it helps with that lifecycle management. Now, what you're going to see is you're going to see a baseline of this app. This app can be embedded in Teams. It's a Power App tool. You can see I have a persona at the top left. I also have a second persona. Now, Julian does have the ability to approve requests as well. There are a number of roles that are associated with this particular app. The third persona is actually the administrator that is behind this application. And we'll get into some of the details around how this app has been actually built. Layers of abstraction. So we always want to use user-centric design principles. One of the principles of that is keep it simple. So if we were to request a team, I can click create. Upon clicking create, that'll move me through a wizard. Each one of these templates are being actually pulled from the Teams administration interface. And these teams have associated channels and applications that are automatically deployed based on the selection. I'm going to use the Adopt 365. As I choose these templates, you can see it's pulling that data and basically letting the user know what channels and applications are going to be included in that rollout. Now, whether that's the ability to have executives, whether that's departmental rollouts. In this instance, we're just going to use the Adopt Office 365. Now, when I select Next, we're going in, look at our visibility settings around that team. Do I want it to be a private team? Do I want it to be a public team? In this instance, we're going to create a private team. What does that mean? That means people will need permission in order to be able to join that particular group, that particular channel. If we were to use a public instance, our privacy settings will allow anyone in the organization to join. When we look at the creation of a team, we need to make sure that that team doesn't previously exist. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an example of test, and then we hit that check availability. There's a clear indicator that that team name has been taken, and I need to try again. I need to come up with a different name for my team. In this instance, we're going to use MISA example. Now, if I check availability for this MISA example, I should get a green letting me know that that team name is available. From here, we move into the sensitivity of the content that is going to be posted within teams. These sensitivity labels can be associated with the typical standards around federal, provincial, and municipality requirements for sensitivity, whether that's protected A, protected B, et cetera, or even secret, although secret isn't recommended to be stored. But we do have examples of that. I'm just going to select general. And you can see this is indicated as a personal label, meaning my personal data and the rules and policies associated with my personal data will be enforced. Again, the greatest governance model you'll ever experience is the one you're not aware of. Now, when we look at our next step, we're basically looking to populate owners and members. Now, our owner is going to be Julian. We want to have at least 2 owners. Now, the wonderful thing about Teams is it'll do some things in the background. If we don't have an owner, it'll automatically associate a member as an owner. But from a governance standpoint, we want the ability to have a delegate. So our delegate in this instance is going to be Lance. And finally, our members. Adele will be a member, and let's use Christine S. Now, obviously, I can continue populating those as we go as well. As I hit next, we've basically got this review and submit, but as we've been going along, you can see check marks indicating where we are in the process of that creation. Now, upon submission, that team request has been generated, and now there's an approval process that is going to kick in around that request. From start to finish, this process takes approximately 5 minutes. If we were to look at around the requesting of a team, we selected a template, we went through some privacy settings, we entered our team information, we added some members, and now we've reviewed and submitted. And now we're looking for request approval. Now, in the background, I just want to talk architecturally what's basically occurring, because the interface is quite simple. But what's occurring in the background is we have an instance of Power Automate that is facilitating the ability to actually make the request. And I'll just give this a second to load. You can see I have a flow that is running, that is executing. And basically in the background, this is providing that ability to take all of those settings and generate a team for me based on a specific template. Now, those templates are still managed and maintained through the Teams administration interface. and they're just made available. So as you go through your customization initiatives and the creation of your Teams templates and the associated policies with that, your admin role is still doing that via a familiar experience. But that approval process is basically ensuring that when people are making requests for Teams, that it's appropriate and can be governed and managed appropriately as well. When we look at checking for our site availability, obviously there's a naming convention that needs to be applied. And we have to check to see if a particular name has already been taken. That's that request availability. If you just cast your mind back to this step. So there's a logic app that executes in the background to make sure that we're able to get the appropriate information. Finally, we've got our sync of our sensitivity labels. Again, sensitivity labels can be managed via Purview, and we're just consuming that data through the app. The ecosystem basically promotes via the Graph API the ability to integrate almost all of the applications that you saw in that ecosystem via the Graph API services. And this is just an example of that. So sensitivity labels can still be managed in place within Purview to ensure that your data loss prevention and the policies and rules around the management of sensitive data, the retention and disposition of that data, is maintained in the appropriate application, and any of the custom applications that you're building within the Power Platform are essentially just consuming that. And then finally, we just process that request. So let's take a look what that looks like. Eventually, there will be what's called an adaptive card posted into a particular channel that only group members would actually see. I'm still using the Teams Classic, and I'm actually going to use the web browser as well. But this will help highlight a couple of other areas. So I should have received a notification, or I'll receive a notification that basically indicates, as you can see, 11:51. This is our MISA example. I've got our description, our example reason. We know that the data is confidential, and we have visibility, a template type that we looked to utilize as well. So now this adaptive card has been posted. I can choose to approve or reject that. And post-approval, the associated Power Automate workflows, the logic apps, the APIs that are associated with this particular application is going to run off and basically create a team for us that is leveraging the appropriate Teams template, the policies that are associated with that, and ensure that we've got a solid governance approach for that implementation. Now you can see, I'll just wait a few minutes for that to occur, but here's one that was already ready baked. We'll post a message to that team welcoming them, and any of the associated apps that they're looking to include within that template can be made easily available for them. Now in this instance, let's just add the Viva Engage app. I've now got the Viva Engage app associated with that tab. You can notice on the left-hand side, I've also got it pinned. Now, I'm going to give that a moment to just settle. We're just going to come into Viva Engage here and we're just going to close out our showcase. Talk about personas really quickly. Personas and the ability to provide persona-based training. Personas are basically a key for the ability to turn data into information and provide insights that help create business value. Now, why would I mention personas? I'm a big believer in the utilization of personas across an organization to identify the key applications, services, and systems that you're looking to leverage. As mentioned, the ecosystem is vast. Now, by building out a persona, these personas can also be applied to Copilot. I mentioned earlier in our presentation that idea of just bots talking to bots. We want to be able to provide a personality. Whenever we're looking at having bots engaged, there's an opportunity to associate a particular persona with that bot. Teams supports the ability to build personas as well. It's a key area for Microsoft to be able to make that distinction and associate who that particular role and individual is and have them associated with a persona within the organization. Most organizations will have 4 to 6 personas within them, whether they're, office workers, remote workers, very high level creation. That facilitates the ability to make sure that we've got solid persona distribution across the organization. Every organization is subtly different.